Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The lobby of Horizon Innovations was a cathedral of glass and greed, a 60-story middle finger to anyone who thought money couldn't buy awe. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, bouncing off a Lalique chandelier that cost more than most people's houses $1 million or so. The janitors whispered when the suits weren't listening. The marble floors gleamed like they'd been polished by angels, and the air smelled like expensive cologne and ambition. It was the kind of place where you either belonged or you didn't, and Jessica Thompson, 27, black, and currently swaying her hips to Beyoncé's Single Ladies through her beat-up earbuds, definitely didn't. Jess pushed her mop across the floor, the gray janitor's uniform hanging loose on her frame, her thick curls tied up in a messy bun that was one bobby pin away from mutiny. She'd been at it since 6 a.m., scrubbing fingerprints off glass doors and wiping coffee rings from mahogany desks, all while dreaming of the leftover pizza in her fridge back in Brooklyn. Her sneakers squeaked against the marble, and she spun the mop like it was her dance partner mouthing the lyrics with the confidence of someone who thought she was alone. "If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it," she sang under her breath, throwing in a little twirl that sent the mop bucket wobbling. She didn't see the private elevator doors slide open, didn't hear the soft ding over Beyoncé's beat, and she definitely didn't notice Nathaniel Caldwell, CEO of Horizon Innovations, step out his $10,000 Tom Ford suit, crisp as a new dollar bill, his Patek Philippe watch catching the light like a tiny supernova. Nate, 35, was the kind of guy who walked into a room and made everyone else feel like they were auditioning for his approval. 6'2", with chestnut hair, just messy enough to look human, and green eyes that could sell you a dream or break your heart. He was scrolling through emails on a gold-plated iPad Pro, too distracted to notice the janitor turning his lobby into her personal dance floor, until she spun right into him. The mop bucket tipped with a cartoonish sploosh, and a wave of soapy water hit Nate's $2,000 Louboutin loafers, soaking his pant legs and splattering his white dress shirt. Jess yanked out her earbuds, her heart dropping like a brick. "Oh shit," spilled out before she could stop it. She froze, staring at the mess, then up at the man she'd just turned into a Jackson Pollock painting. His face was unreadable, but those eyes. God, those eyes locked onto her like she was the only person in the universe. "I'm so sorry," Jess blurted, dropping the mop and grabbing a rag from her cart. She lunged forward, wiping at his shirt, which only smeared the dirt worse. "I didn't see you. I swear I was just, oh my God, your shoes. I'll pay for the dry cleaning or sell a kidney, whatever it takes." Her hands were shaking, her Brooklyn accent thick with panic. She glanced at his watch, then his suit, and her stomach twisted. This guy was money. Big money. The kind of money that could get her fired with a snap of his fingers. Nate blinked, then did the last thing she expected. He laughed, a deep, warm laugh that rolled out like he'd been holding it in for years. "Relax," he said, stepping back to avoid another swipe of her rag. "You've got some moves. Better than my PR team's last pitch deck." He glanced at the puddle on the floor, then back at her. "And don't worry about the shoes. They're insured. Probably more than your car." Jess stopped rag dangling from her hand, unsure if he was mocking her or flirting. "My car's a subway card, so that's not saying much," she shot back then, bit her lip. "Why did I say that?" But Nate's smile widened, and for a split second she forgot she was supposed to be groveling. He was cute, stupid. Cute with a dimple that should have been illegal. But cute didn't pay her bills. And her manager, Mr. Harris, was a vulture who'd love any excuse to can her. "Look, I'm really sorry," she said, straightening up. "I'll clean this up and, I'll stay out of your way forever. Promise." She forced a smile, but her mind was racing. She needed this job. Her mom's medical bills were piling up, and her dream of being a journalist was already on life support after she'd dropped out of college. One wrong move and she'd be back to square one. Nate waved off her apology. "You're not in my way. You're the first person I've seen today who looks like they're actually enjoying their job." He glanced at her name tag, pinned crookedly to her uniform. "Jessica, right?" "Jess," she corrected, then winced. "Why am I correcting the guy who could fire me?" "Yeah, Jess. Thompson. And I'm usually better at not turning people into modern art." "Jess," he repeated like he was tasting the name. "Well, Jess, you've made my morning interesting. Keep the kidney. I'll survive." He stepped over the puddle, gave her a nod, and headed toward the boardroom, his wet shoes squeaking faintly. But as he reached the glass doors, he glanced back, and Jess felt a jolt like she'd touched a live wire. That look wasn't just polite. It was something. She stood there, rag-dripping, heart-pounding, until the boardroom doors closed. "Well, Jess," she muttered to herself, "you just baptized the CEO. Time to update your LinkedIn to unemployed." Inside the boardroom, Nate sat at the head of a $50,000 walnut table, surrounded by executives in suits that cost more than Jess's rent. The walls were lined with screens flashing stock charts, and a Jean-Michel Basquiat painting loomed behind him, all raw lines and bold colors. His brother Ethan, the CFO, was droning on about quarterly projections. But Nate's mind was elsewhere, specifically on the woman who'd turned his Armani shirt into a Rorschach test. He shouldn't be thinking about her. He was Nathaniel Caldwell Tech, wunderkind, heir to a real estate fortune, and the guy Forbes called the future of innovation. He had a company to run a lawsuit to dodge, and a board breathing down his neck to keep Horizon's stock price in the stratosphere. But all he could see was Jess's wide brown eyes, her quick wit, and the way she danced like nobody was watching. She was chaos in a janitor's uniform, and he hadn't felt that kind of spark in years. "Earth to Nate," Ethan said, snapping his fingers. At 38, Ethan was the serious Caldwell with a buzz cut and a tie so tight it looked like it was strangling him. "You with us, or are you still mourning your shirt?" The room chuckled, and Nate forced a smile. "Just thinking about our employee engagement stats," he lied. "They're garbage. Maybe we need a fresh perspective, someone who actually knows what it's like on the ground floor." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You mean the consultants we paid $2 million last year? They gave us a 200-page report." "Yeah, and it's sitting in my desk drawer holding up my coffee mug." Nate shot back. "I'm talking about real people. The ones who keep this place running. Like the woman who just turned his morning upside down." He didn't say it, but the idea was taking root. Jess had something the suits didn't guts. Back in the janitor's closet, Jess was having a full-blown crisis. She'd shoved her cart into the cramped space surrounded by bleach bottles and a flickering fluorescent light. Her best friend and fellow janitor, Letitia Brown, was leaning against the wall, sipping a Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee and scrolling through TikTok. At 45, Letitia was a Brooklyn lifer with a quick laugh and a knack for saying exactly what Jess didn't want to hear. "So let me get this straight," Letitia said, not looking up from her phone. "You spilled a bucket on Nathaniel Caldwell, the guy who owns half of Manhattan," and he laughed. "Girl, you're either cursed or blessed, and I'm leaning toward cursed." Jess groaned, slumping onto a stool. "I'm fired. Letitia Harris is gonna skin me alive. He's been looking for an excuse since I told him his toupee looks like a dead squirrel." Letitia snorted. "Harris can kiss my ass. But real talk, you gotta be careful. Caldwell's a big deal. I heard he bought a penthouse in Tribeca for $20 million cash. You don't mess with guys like that. I didn't mean to mess with him." Jess threw her hands up. "I was just vibing. And now I'm gonna be vibing on the unemployment line." She pulled out her phone, checking her bank account. $127. 43. Enough for rent. Maybe if she skipped groceries. Her mom's hospital bills were due next week, and the weight of it all pressed down like a brick on her chest. Letitia set her coffee down, her voice softening. "Listen, Jess, you're smart. Smarter than half the suits up there. You were going to be a journalist, remember? You've got that fire. Don't let one bucket ruin you. Jess managed a weak smile. Letitia was right. She had dreamed of writing for the New York Times, exposing corruption, telling stories that mattered. But dreams didn't pay the bills, and college debt had crushed her before she could finish her degree. Now she was here mopping floors and dodging creeps like Harris. "Thanks, Tish," she said, "but I'm not holding my breath, guys. Like Caldwell don't notice people like me, unless we're screwing up their day." She was wrong. That afternoon, Jess was scrubbing a conference table when her walkie-talkie crackled. "Thompson, report to the 35th floor." Now Harris's voice was all venom, and Jess's stomach dropped. This was it. The pink slip. She dragged herself to the elevator, her sneakers scuffing the polished floor, and rode up to the executive suite. The doors opened to a hallway that screamed money. Dark wood paneling, abstract art worth more than her life, and a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a Vogue shoot. "Jessica Thompson," the receptionist said, barely glancing up from her MacBook. "Mr. Caldwell wants to see you." Jess's knees went weak. Caldwell. As in the Caldwell, like CEO. Caldwell. The receptionist sighed. "Unless we've got another one. I don't know about. His office is down the hall. Don't touch anything." Jess forced her legs to move, her heart hammering. Nate's office was a palace. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of Central Park. A Minotti desk that probably cost more than her mom's house, and a leather chair that looked like it belonged in a spaceship. Nate was standing by the window, his ruined shirt swapped for a fresh one, his sleeves rolled up to show forearms that didn't belong on a desk jockey. He turned, and that dimple hit her like a sucker punch. "Jess," he said, like they were old friends. "Thanks for coming. Have a seat." She perched on the edge of a chair, ready to bolt. "Look, Mr. Caldwell, I'm really sorry about earlier. It was an accident, I swear. Call me Nate," he cut in, sitting across from her. "And I'm not here to fire you. The opposite, actually." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "I want your help. Our employee engagement is tanking. People are miserable, and I need someone who sees the real picture. Someone like you." Jess blinked. Sure, she'd misheard. "Me. I'm a janitor. I don't know anything about whatever you do up here. Apps, AI. I barely know how to use my phone." Nate laughed, and it was unfairly charming. "You don't need an MBA to know what's broken. You're on the ground floor, literally. You see things the suits don't. I want you to join a project. Talk to people, get their ideas. Tell me what's really going on. Paid, of course. Double your current rate." Her jaw dropped. Double her pay. That was rent bills. Maybe even a shot at breathing easy for once. But doubt crept in. "Why me? You don't even know me. I know you're not afraid to speak your mind," he said, his voice low like he was sharing a secret. "And you made me laugh, which is rarer than you think." "Say yes, Jess. Take a chance." She stared at him, her mind a tug of war. This was crazy. Guys like Nate didn't pluck janitors out of obscurity unless they wanted something, but his eyes were steady, and that spark from earlier was still there, buzzing between them. Maybe this was her shot. Maybe she could be more than a mop and a paycheck. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm in. But if I screw this up, don't blame me when your fancy shoes get ruined again." Nate grinned, standing to shake her hand. His grip was warm, firm, and way too distracting. "Deal. Welcome to the team, Jess Thompson." As she left his office, her head spinning, Jess couldn't shake the feeling that her life had just taken a hard left turn. She was a janitor playing consultant for a millionaire CEO. Either she was about to make history, or she was in way over her head. "Hey, what do you think of Jess and Nate's wild first meeting? Drop a comment below and let us know where you're reading from, Brooklyn, Cali, or somewhere totally different. If you're loving this vibe, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss what happens next. Trust me, It's about to get even crazier. Jess Thompson had never been good at keeping her mouth shut. Growing up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, she'd learned to talk fast and fight faster, whether it was clapping back at corner store creeps or shutting down her high school debate team. But standing in the elevator of Horizon Innovations, heading to the 35th floor for her first consultant meeting, she felt like her tongue was glued to the roof of her mouth. The elevator was a sleek cocoon of mirrors and leather, smelling faintly of cedarwood and money. Her reflection stared back gray janitor's uniform swapped for a thrifted H&M blazer, her curls tamed into a low bun, and her beat-up sneakers swapped for flats that pinched her toes. She looked like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. "Yo, Jess, you got this," she muttered, adjusting her blazer. "You're not just a janitor. You're a janitor with a side hustle. Totally legit." The pep talk didn't help. Her palms were sweaty, and her heart was doing a bad impression of a drill sergeant. She'd said yes to Nate Caldwell's crazy offer, double pay to snoop around and report on what Horizon's employees really thought, but now she was second-guessing everything. What did she know about corporate nonsense? She barely understood her phone bill. The elevator dinged and the doors slid open to a hallway that screamed, "I'm richer than your dreams." Dark wood paneling, abstract art that looked like a toddler's tantrum but probably cost millions, and a receptionist who could have moonlighted as a runway model. Jess forced her legs to move, clutching a cheap notebook she'd grabbed from Rite Aid. The receptionist barely glanced up. "Jessica Thompson, boardroom's third door on the right. Don't be late." Jess nodded, swallowing the urge to say something smart-ass like, "Thanks, Vogue." She pushed open the boardroom door and froze. The room was a fortress of power, a $50,000 walnut table, Eames chairs that cost more than her rent, and floor-to-ceiling windows framing Central Park like a postcard. A dozen executives sat around the table, all white, all male, all looking like they'd been born in Brooks Brothers suits. And at the head, in a navy Zegna blazer that hugged his shoulders like it was custom-made because it was, sat Nate Caldwell, his green eyes flicked to her, and that damn dimple flashed, making her stomach do a backflip. "Just glad you could join us." "Nate," said his voice smooth as bourbon. "Grab a seat." She slid into the closest chair, feeling every pair of eyes on her like lasers. Her blazer felt like a costume, and her flats were definitely giving her a blister. Nate gestured to the room. "Everyone, this is Jessica Thompson. She's joining us to provide insights from the ground floor. Jess, why don't you start by sharing what you've seen so far?" Jess's mouth went dry. Start with what she'd spent the last 2 days chatting with janitors, security guards, and cafeteria workers, scribbling notes about broken vending machines and bitchy managers. But these guys didn't look like they cared about soggy sandwiches. She cleared her throat, her Brooklyn accent cutting through the room's sterile silence. Okay. So I've been talking to folks downstairs, the ones who keep this place running. You know, and like people are pissed. The break room coffee tastes like motor oil. The Wi-Fi's slower than my grandma's dial-up and nobody feels heard. Like you got all these fancy reports, but the real talk's happening in the hallways. Silence, the kind that makes you want to crawl under the table. Then a guy with a comb-over and a Rolex snorted. "So we're taking advice from the cleaning crew now. What's next? Asking the mailroom for stock tips." The room chuckled and Jess's face burned. She glanced at Nate, expecting him to shut it down, but he was watching her, his expression unreadable. "Okay, fine," she thought. "You want to play? Let's play." She leaned forward, locking eyes with comb-over. "Maybe you should. The mailroom knows more about what's going on here than your 200-page PowerPoint, like how the tech team's burning out because they're pulling 80-hour weeks while you're debating font sizes, or how the cafeteria staff's got no health insurance, but you're dropping millions on art. Nobody understands." The chuckles died. Comb-over's face turned red, and another exec, a guy with a tie that probably cost more than her mom's car, piped up. With all due respect, Miss Thompson, this is a multi-billion-dollar company. We need expertise, not hallway gossip. Jess opened her mouth, but Nate cut in, his voice calm but sharp. With all due respect, Greg, expertise isn't worth shit if it's out of touch. Jess is here because she sees what we don't, and if you don't like it, you can take it up with me. He leaned back, his eyes flicking to Jess with a spark of approval. Go on, Jess. What else? She exhaled, her confidence creeping back. People want to feel like they matter. Give 'em better coffee, sure, but also listen. Run a survey, let 'em vent, act on it. You'd be surprised how much loyalty you can buy with a decent cappuccino machine and some respect. Nate nodded, jotting something on his iPad. Noted. Let's move on. The meeting shifted to revenue projections, but Jess felt a shift in the room. Some execs were still side-eyeing her, but others were listening. And Nate. He was watching her like she'd just cracked a code he'd been chasing for years. After the meeting, Jess bolted to the janitor's closet, her flat slapping the floor. Letitia was there, munching on a bag of hot Cheetos and scrolling through Instagram. Well, Letitia said, licking orange dust off her fingers. You get fired yet? Or you still living the Cinderella dream? Jess slumped against the wall, her blazer half off. Not fired, but I might have pissed off half the board. One dude acted like I was crashing his country club, called my ideas gossip. Can you believe that? Letitia snorted. Oh, I believe it. You're a black woman telling rich white guys how to run their empire. They're gonna clutch their pearls, but you held your own, right? Barely. Jess admitted. Nate backed me up, though. He's different. Not like the rest of them. Letitia raised an eyebrow. Nate, huh? First name basis with the billionaire girl you're playing with fire. I heard he's got a penthouse in Tribeca with a pool on the roof. You spill water on him again. He might drown you in it. Jess laughed, but her mind was stuck on Nate. That look he'd given her in the boardroom wasn't just professional, it was personal, and it scared the hell out of her, because guys like Nate didn't fall for girls like her. They fell for women who knew which fork to use at a gala, not women who grew up splitting a Happy Meal with their mom. Her phone buzzed, pulling her out of her thoughts. A text from Malik Jackson, her childhood best friend. Yo, Jess, coffee at our spot. Got something to tell you, she smiled. Malik was her rock. 30, a journalist with a chip on his shoulder and a heart bigger than Brooklyn. He'd been there through her worst days, like when she dropped out of college or when her mom got sick. Whatever he had to say, it'd be a welcome distraction from this corporate circus. The spot was a hole-in-the-wall coffee shop in Bed-Stuy, with mismatched chairs, a jukebox that only played 90s R&B, and coffee that tasted like it was brewed with love and a prayer. Jess walked in her blazer, swapped for a hoodie, and spotted Malik at their usual table. His dreads tied back, his laptop open to a half-written article. He was wearing a faded Public Enemy t-shirt, and his dark eyes lit up when he saw her. Yo, superstar, he said, standing to hug her. Heard you're out here making waves at Horizon. Spill the tea, Jess grinned, sliding into the chair. More like spilling mop water. I'm in over my head. Malik. They got me playing consultant, but half the board thinks I'm the help who got lost. Malik's smile faded. That's why I wanted to talk. I'm working on a piece about corporate bullshit. How places like Horizon screw over workers, especially black and brown folks. I got sources saying they're cutting janitor hours while the CEO's buying $20 million penthouses. You in the belly of the beast now. You gotta be careful. Jess's stomach twisted. You're writing about Horizon, Malik. I just got this gig. If you drop a bomb like that, I'm toast. He leaned forward, his voice low. Jess, you're better than mopping floors for some rich dude. You were gonna be a journalist, remember? Come work with me. We'll expose these clowns together. He slid a moleskin notebook across the table, her name embossed on the cover. For your big ideas, like old times. She touched the notebook, her throat tight. Malik had always believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. They'd spent high school dreaming of changing the world, but life had other plans. Now he was offering her a way out, but it meant betraying Nate and the spark she couldn't ignore. "I'll think about it," she said, tucking the notebook into her bag. "But I'm not ready to burn bridges yet." Malik sighed, but didn't push. "Just don't let 'em dim your light, Jess. You're a star, even if they can't see it." Back at Horizon, Nate was in his office staring out at Central Park, his mind on Jess. She'd held her own in that boardroom, throwing shade at Greg like it was her day job. He'd meant to keep it professional, but every time she opened her mouth, he felt like a kid with a crush. It was dangerous. He was Nathaniel Caldwell, CEO, not some guy who could afford to chase a janitor with a smile that made his knees weak. His door opened and Claire Beaumont swept in, all elegance and edge. At 33, Claire was a lawyer with a resume longer than a CVS receipt and a face that could stop traffic. Her Chanel suit hugged her like a second skin, and her Hermes Kelly bag swung from her arm like a status symbol. She'd been Nate's college fling, the one his family had always wanted him to marry, and now she was back to help Horizon dodge a lawsuit. "Nathaniel," she said, her voice like silk with a razor's edge. "You look distracted. Rough day. Just navigating the usual chaos," he said, forcing a smile. "What's up?" She set her bag on his desk, the leather gleaming under the light. "The lawsuit's heating up. We need to strategize, preferably over drinks, but I hear you've been busy with new hires." Her eyes flicked to the door like she could see Jess through it. "A janitor in the boardroom. Bold move. Or are you just trying to stir the pot?" Nate's jaw tightened. "Jess has insights we need. She's not afraid to call it like she sees it." Claire laughed, sharp and cold. "Oh, she's certainly unique. Not many people would wear sneakers to a board meeting. But be careful, Nate. You're playing with fire, and not the kind that comes with a prenup." He didn't respond, but her words lingered. Claire was right. This was risky, not just for him, but for Jess. The board was already grumbling, and Ethan was on his case about optics. But walking away wasn't an option. Not when Jess was the first person in years who made him feel alive. That night, Nate invited Jess to Le Bernardin, a 3-Michelin-star restaurant where the forks were silver and the menu didn't bother listing prices. Jess showed up in a borrowed dress from Letitia, a red number that was a size too tight and made her feel like she was auditioning for a rom-com. The dining room was a sea of crystal chandeliers and hushed voices, and Jess's flat squeaked as she followed the maitre d' to Nate's table. He stood to greet her, his navy suit swapped for a tailored blazer and jeans, his Patek Philippe glinting under the light. "Jess, you look incredible," he said, pulling out her chair. She snorted, sitting down. "I look like I'm about to trip over this tablecloth. This place is fancier than my wildest dreams. You sure they're not gonna kick me out for breathing too loud?" Nate laughed, his eyes crinkling. "If they do, I'll buy the place and make you the manager. Order whatever you want." "It's on me." She glanced at the menu, her eyes widening at words like langoustine and foie gras. Is there a burger option? Or am I supposed to eat gold flakes for dinner?" She flipped the page, then whispered, "Nate, this fish costs more than my phone. I'm scared to touch it." He leaned in, his voice low and teasing. "Try the lobster. It's worth it. And don't worry. I'm not here to grill you. I just want to hear more about your ideas." Jess relaxed, but only a little. The food was unreal lobster that melted like butter wine, that tasted like it was bottled by angels. But the whole time she felt Claire's words echoing in her head. Unique. That was code for you don't belong, and maybe she didn't. Nate was a millionaire with a penthouse and a private jet. She was a dropout with $127 in her bank account and a mom who needed her to keep it together. "So," Nate said, sipping his wine, "what's the one thing you'd change about Horizon if you had the keys to the kingdom?" Jess set down her fork, her nerves fading. "I'd make people feel seen. Not just the suits, But the folks like me and Letitia, we're invisible, Nate. You got all this money, but you're missing the heart. Start small. Fix the break room. Give us a voice. It's not rocket science. He nodded, his eyes locked on hers. You're right, and I want you to lead that charge. I'm serious, Jess. You're not just a janitor, you're a game changer. Her heart skipped, but doubt crept in. Was he for real, or was this some PR stunt? She wanted to believe him, but Malik's warning was loud in her mind, and Claire's shadow was even louder. As they left the restaurant, Nate's hand brushed hers, sending a jolt through her body. She pulled away, her voice shaky. Thanks for dinner, Nate, but I gotta figure out if I'm cut out for this. He looked at her, his expression soft, but intense. You are? Jess, trust me. She walked away, the city lights blurring as she headed for the subway. Trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not yet. Jess Thompson was pretty sure she'd lost her damn mind. 2 weeks ago, she was mopping floors at Horizon Innovations, dodging her manager's death glares and dreaming of leftover pizza. Now she was 7,000 miles from Brooklyn, standing in a gilded elevator at the Burj Al Arab in Dubai, wearing a borrowed navy blazer that pinched her armpits and clutching a USB drive like it was the Holy Grail. The elevator's gold-plated walls reflected her nervous face curls, pulled into a tight bun, brown eyes wide with panic, and a fake smile that screamed, I don't belong here. She was about to present to Horizon's board and a room full of international investors, and the only thing keeping her from bolting was the promise of double pay and the memory of Nate Caldwell's stupidly perfect dimple. Yo, Jess, she whispered to her reflection. You're a badass. You've faced worse. Like that time you told Mr. Harris his breath smelled like tuna. You got this. It wasn't true. She didn't have this. She'd spent the last week interviewing Horizon employees, janitors, techies, even the grumpy security guy who hoarded Snickers and cobbling together a report on how to fix the company's toxic culture, but presenting it in a room where the chairs probably cost more than her mom's house. That was a whole new level of nope. The elevator dinged and the doors opened to a hallway that looked like it belonged in a sultan's palace. Marble floors inlaid with gold chandeliers dripping with Swarovski crystals, and air that smelled like jasmine and obscene wealth. Jess's flat sank into a plush rug as she followed a hotel staffer to the Al-Falak ballroom, where Horizon was hosting its Global Innovation Summit. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from Letitia. Don't trip, superstar, and don't let those rich fools dim your shine. Jess grinned, but her stomach was doing cartwheels. This was her shot to prove she was more than a janitor with a big mouth, or to crash and burn in front of the world's fanciest suits. The ballroom was a fever dream of luxury, circular with a domed ceiling painted like a starry sky. It had tables draped in silk, gold-rimmed glassware and a view of the Arabian Gulf that made Jess's jaw drop. The board was there. Ethan Caldwell with his permanent scowl, Greg, the comb-over guy, and a dozen other execs who looked like they'd never smiled in their lives. The investors in bespoke suits and diamond-encrusted watches sipped $500 a bottle sparkling water like it was LaCroix. And at the front, setting up a projector, was Nate, his tailored charcoal suit hugging his frame like it was designed to make her forget how to blink. He caught her eye and flashed that dimple, and Jess's heart did a traitor's somersault. Jess, you ready? He called, his voice cutting through the room's low hum. Nope, she muttered under her breath, but she forced a nod and walked to the front, plugging her USB into the laptop. The screen flickered to life, and she took a deep breath, her hand shaking as she gripped the clicker. You got this? Just don't puke. She turned to the room, her Brooklyn accent loud and unapologetic. All right, y'all, I'm Jess Thompson, and I'm here to tell you why your company's bleeding talent faster than a bad reality show loses viewers. A few investors chuckled, but Ethan's eyes narrowed. Jess clicked to the first slide, expecting her carefully crafted chart on employee turnover. Instead, the screen lit up with a giant rubber duck in sunglasses floating on a blue background. The caption read, "The importance of swimming together." Her stomach plummeted. "Oh, hell no," she whispered, clicking frantically. The next slide, a row of toy ducks in a bathtub with the text, "When a duck swims alone, it gets lost." The room was dead silent except for a stifled snort from the back. Jess's face burned as she clicked again. Engagement is like warm water. You can't see it, but everyone feels it. More ducks. She was presenting a freaking bath toy manifesto. She glanced at Nate, expecting him to look horrified. Instead, he was pressing his lips together, his shoulders shaking like he was fighting a laugh. "Jess," he said, his voice strained. "Did you mean to channel your inner preschool teacher?" The room erupted in laughter, and Jess wanted to melt into the marble floor. She'd saved the wrong file, a mock-up she'd made as a joke while messing around with PowerPoint. Her real presentation with its graphs and quotes from employees was probably sitting on her laptop back in Brooklyn. She clicked one last time, praying for a miracle. The final slide. 3 ducks in shades captioned, "Together, we are a lake of potential." Jess dropped the clicker like it was radioactive. "Okay, so this is not my presentation," she said, her voice shaky but loud. "I mean, unless you're really into ducks, in which case I'm your girl." More laughter, but it wasn't cruel. It was warm, like they were rooting for her. She took a deep breath, her mind racing. "Screw it. If I'm going down, I'm going down swinging." "All right, forget the slides," she said, stepping away from the podium. "Let's talk real. I've spent weeks listening to your people, janitors, coders, the folks who make your coffee, and they're drowning. Not because they're lazy, but because nobody's listening. You've got a lake of potential out there, but everyone's swimming alone. Fix the break room, sure, but also fix the fact that people feel like numbers, not humans. Run anonymous surveys, give them training, show them they matter. It's not about money, it's about heart." The room was quiet now, every eye on her. Jess's hands were trembling, but she kept going, her voice steadying. "I'm not gonna lie, I'm nobody. I mop floors for a living, but I see what you don't. And if you ignore that, you're not just losing employees, you're losing your soul." Silence. Then slowly, an investor in a $20,000 Brioni suit started clapping. Others joined, and soon the room was a wave of applause. Ethan looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, but even Greg gave a grudging nod. Jess's knees nearly buckled, but she managed to smile, her heart pounding like a drumline. She glanced at Nate, and his eyes were shining with something that wasn't just pride. It was awe. "Well," he said, standing, "that's one way to make an impression. Let's take a break, folks. Jess, can I steal you for a minute?" She followed him to a corner of the ballroom, her legs wobbly. "I'm so sorry," she blurted. "I swear I had a real presentation." "I don't know how, Jess. Stop," Nate said, his voice low and warm. "You were incredible. Ducks or no ducks, you just owned that room. I've never seen the board shut up like that." He stepped closer, his cologne a mix of cedar and something unfairly sexy, making her dizzy. "You're a force, you know that." She laughed, shaky but real. "A force of chaos, maybe. I thought I was toast. Nah," he said, his dimple flashing. "You're the whole damn bakery." His hand brushed hers just for a second, and Jess felt a spark that could have lit up the Dubai skyline. But doubt crept in, cold and sharp. He was Nathaniel Caldwell, CEO with a penthouse and a private jet. She was Jess Thompson, dropout with a subway card and a mom who needed her. This wasn't a rom-com, this was real life, and real life didn't do fairy tales. That night, Nate insisted on celebrating instead of some bougie Dubai restaurant. He took Jess to a hole-in-the-wall kebab joint tucked away in Deira, where the neon sign flickered. and the tables were sticky with hot sauce. Jess, back in jeans and a hoodie, felt like she could breathe again. The place was loud, packed with locals and expats, and the smell of grilled lamb made her stomach growl. Nate, still in his suit but with the tie loosened, looked absurdly out of place, but weirdly at home, tearing into a shawarma like it was his life's mission. "Okay, Caldwell," Jess said, dipping a fry in tahini. "You're a millionaire, and you're eating street food with a janitor. What's the catch?" "No catch," he said, wiping sauce off his chin. "I just like you. You're real. Most people in my world are playing a role, but you're just Jess." He pulled a small box from his pocket and slid it across the table. "For you. A thank you for today." Jess's heart skipped. She opened the box, half expecting a joke, but inside was a Tiffany & Co. bracelet, silver with a delicate blue stone that matched her eyes. It probably cost more than her rent for a year. "Nate, this is insane," she said, her voice catching. "I can't take this." "You can," he said, his eyes soft. "It's not about the money. It's about you showing up every damn day and being yourself. That's worth more than anything in my world." She slipped the bracelet on her fingers, trembling. It felt like a promise, but of what she wasn't sure. They finished their food, and when they stepped outside, the Dubai night was warm, the city lights glittering like a fever dream. Nate walked her to the hotel, his shoulder brushing hers, and when they reached the lobby, he leaned in, his lips grazing her cheek. "Good night, Jess," he whispered, and she felt it all the way to her toes. She floated to her room, a standard one, not the gold-plated suite the execs got, and collapsed on the bed, the bracelet glinting under the light. But as the high-faded doubt crept back, Nate was too good to be true. And then there was Claire with her Hermes bag and her history with Nate. Jess's phone buzzed and she groaned, expecting Letitia's latest meme. Instead, it was "Malik, Jess, we need to talk. I'm dropping a story on Horizon. It's big. Call me." Her heart sank. Malik's article, the one that could tank the company and her shot at something bigger. She stared at the ceiling, the bracelet heavy on her wrist. Nate's world was pulling her in, but Malik was her anchor, the guy who'd seen her at her lowest and still believed in her. She needed to see him to figure out what the hell was going on. The next day, Jess was back in Brooklyn, jet-lagged and jittery, meeting Malik at their favorite jazz bar in Bed-Stuy. The place was cozy with a Steinway piano in the corner and walls plastered with old vinyl covers. Malik was at a booth, his laptop open, his Public Enemy t-shirt swapped for a button-down that made him look like a professor. He stood when he saw her, his hug warm but tense. "Damn, Jess," he said, eyeing the Tiffany bracelet. "You're out here living the high life. Dubai treat you good?" She forced a laugh, sliding into the booth. "Yeah, if you call presenting a duck slideshow to billionaires. Good." "What's this about your article? You can't just text me some cryptic shit and expect me to chill." Malik's face hardened. "I got proof. Horizon's been dodging labor laws, cutting hours for janitors, skimping on benefits, all while Caldwell's buying art for his office. It's not just a story, it's personal. They're screwing people like you, Jess." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "But it's more than that. I've been holding on to something for a while. I love you, Jess. Always have. And I can't watch you get sucked into that world." Jess's breath caught. Malik's eyes were raw, vulnerable, and it hit her like a freight train. He'd been her best friend since they were kids, the guy who'd snuck her into concerts and helped her study for SATs. But love, that was a line they'd never crossed. "Malik," she said, her voice soft. "You're my family, but I'm not. I don't feel that way. And I can't walk away from Horizon, not yet." His jaw tightened, but he nodded. "I get it, but I'm not stopping the story. It drops next week. I'm sorry, Jess. But people need to know the truth. She left the bar, her head spinning. Malik's confession was a gut punch, but his article was a ticking bomb. If it hit, Horizon could crumble, and Nate's trust in her would be the first casualty. She looked at the bracelet, its blue stone catching the streetlight. She was falling for Nate hard, but the ground beneath her was cracking, and she didn't know how to stop it. Jess Thompson was drowning in a sea of her own bad decisions. She stood on the deck of a Sunseeker yacht docked off Monaco's glittering coast, the Mediterranean breeze tugging at her borrowed Versace dress, a $15,000 number that hugged her curves but made her feel like a kid playing dress-up. The yacht was a floating palace, teak floors polished to a mirror shine, a Swarovski chandelier glittering in the salon, and a bar stocked with Chateau Petrus that cost more per bottle than her monthly rent. Horizon Innovations had rented it for a high-stakes investor dinner, a desperate bid to shore up support after Malik Jackson's bombshell article hit the internet like a wrecking ball. Jess gripped a glass of sparkling water, her Tiffany bracelet glinting under the string lights, and tried not to puke from nerves. Malik's piece, published in The Intercept, was a gut punch, titled The Dark Side of Innovation, How Horizon Screws Its Workers. It detailed slashed hours for janitors, non-existent benefits for contract staff, and a culture that prioritized stock prices over people, especially black and brown employees. The article name-dropped Nate, quoting an anonymous source who called him a billionaire playboy, more interested in art than ethics. Horizon's stock had tanked 10% overnight, and the board was out for blood. Jess's name wasn't in the article, but she felt like she'd betrayed Nate by not warning him. Worse, she hadn't told him about Malik's confession, and the guilt was eating her alive. She scanned the deck where investors in bespoke suits and diamond-encrusted watches mingled with Horizon execs. Nate was at the center, his charcoal Brioni suit tailored to perfection, his Patek Philippe catching the light as he worked the crowd. He was all charm, but Jess could see the strain in his jaw, the way his smile didn't reach his eyes. She wanted to talk to him to explain, but every time she got close, someone pulled him away. A board member, an investor, or worst of all, Claire Beaumont. Claire glided through the party like she owned it, her red Valentino dress clinging to her like a second skin, her Hermes Kelly bag swinging from her arm. She'd been glued to Nate all night, her hand brushing his elbow, her laugh sharp and calculated. Jess caught Claire whispering something to Nate, her lips close to his ear and her stomach twisted. Claire wasn't just a lawyer or Nate's ex. She was a predator circling Jess's life like a shark smelling blood. Having fun, superstar. Letitia's voice crackled through Jess's earpiece. She'd snuck a Bluetooth bud from the IT department to keep in touch with Letitia, who was back in New York, probably eating hot Cheetos and watching Real Housewives. "You're on a yacht, girl. Why, you sound like you're at a funeral." "Because I'm surrounded by vultures," Jess muttered, ducking behind a potted palm. Malik's articles got everyone freaking out, and Claire's acting like she's Nate's wife. "I'm about to yeet myself into the sea." Letitia snorted. "Don't yeet nothing. You're wearing Versace. Spill some of that fancy wine on Claire's bag instead." "Bet it costs more than my car," Jess managed to laugh. But it died when she saw Claire hand Nate a flute of Dom Perignon, her fingers lingering on his. Jess's grip tightened on her glass, and before she could stop herself, she marched over her flat, slapping the deck. "Yo, Nate," she said louder than she meant. "Can we talk?" Claire raised an eyebrow, her smile dripping with condescension. "Oh, Jessica, I didn't see you there enjoying the party." "It's Jess," she snapped. "And yeah, it's a blast, you know. Minus the part where everyone's whispering about how we're all screwed." She turned to Nate, ignoring Claire's smirk. 2 minutes. Please." Nate nodded, his eyes searching hers. "Excuse us, Claire." He followed Jess to a quiet corner of the deck where the sea lapped against the hull and the stars glittered like a billionaire's bank account. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice low. "You've been off all night." Jess's throat tightened. She wanted to tell him everything. Malik's article, his confession, her guilt, but the words stuck. Instead, she blurted, "Why's Claire all over you? She's acting like you're her date, and I'm just the help who crashed the party." Nate's brow furrowed. "Claire's working the lawsuit. She's just being Claire." "It's not what you think." "Then what is it?" Jess's voice rose, drawing a few glances. "Because I'm out here risking everything. My job, my rep, and you're letting her play arm candy while I'm dodging dirty looks from your board. I'm not your project, Nate. I'm not here to make you look good." His eyes darkened. "You think that's what this is? A PR stunt, Jess? I put my neck on the line for you. The board's been on my ass since day one, and I'm still here fighting for you, for me, or for your image." She shot back. "Because right now it feels like I'm the only one who's gonna lose." She turned to go, but Nate grabbed her wrist, his touch warm and urgent. "Jess, wait," he said, his voice softer now. "I see you, not as a janitor, not as a consultant. Just you, and I'm not letting you walk away thinking otherwise." He stepped closer, the space between them electric. "Stay. Please." She hesitated, her heart pounding. But before she could answer, Claire's voice cut through. "Nathaniel, the investors need you." She stood a few feet away, her smile razor sharp. Jess yanked her wrist free and stormed off her Versace dress, swishing like a battle flag. She didn't look back, but she felt Nate's eyes on her, and it hurt more than she could admit. The next week, Nate flew Jess to a company retreat at a villa in Amalfi, Italy, hoping to smooth things over. The villa was a slice of paradise perched on a cliff, with an infinity pool that spilled into the Mediterranean lemon groves, scenting the air, and Versace. Home furniture that made Jess afraid to sit down. She'd traded the Versace dress for jeans and a hoodie. Her Tiffany bracelet, the only reminder of the yacht disaster. Nate had been distant since Monaco, buried in damage control for Malik's article, and Jess was drowning in guilt. She hadn't told him Malik was her friend, let alone that he'd confessed his love. Every time she tried, the words turned to ash. They were supposed to be brainstorming, employee engagement, but the tension between them was thicker than the villa's stone walls. After a day of forced smiles and awkward silences, Jess found Nate on the villa's terrace at dusk, the sky bleeding orange and pink. He was in a white linen shirt, sleeves rolled up, staring at the sea like it held all the answers. She took a deep breath and walked over her sneakers, scuffing the tiles. "We gotta talk," she said, her voice cutting through the cicadas' hum. "This ain't working. You're avoiding me. I'm avoiding you, and I'm about to lose my mind." Nate turned his green eyes stormy. "I'm not avoiding you, Jess. I'm trying to keep this company from imploding. That article's got the board calling for my head, and Ethan's saying I'm distracted by you." Her chest tightened. "So it's my fault. You're the one who dragged me into this. I was fine mopping floors. Nate, I didn't ask to be your whatever I am. You're not just anything," he snapped, stepping closer. "You're the only person who makes this feel worth it. But you're shutting me out, Jess. What's going on? And don't bullshit me." The dam broke. "The guy who wrote that article, Malik, he's my best friend. Has been since we were kids, and he told me he loves me." Her voice cracked and she looked away, the sea blurring through tears. "I didn't know he was gonna drop that story. I swear, Nate, but I didn't stop him. And now I'm scared. I'm gonna lose you." Nate's face softened, but his voice was raw. "Why didn't you tell me I trusted you, Jess? I put everything on the line and you're keeping secrets because I was scared," she shouted, her hands balling into fists. "I'm not like Claire with her fancy degrees and her perfect life. I'm a dropout, who's one bad day from losing everything. I don't belong in your world, Nate. And every time I try, someone reminds me of that, including you when you let her hang all over you." He flinched, but didn't back down. Claire's nothing to me. She's a friend, a colleague. That's it. But you're everything, and I'm not letting you walk away because you're scared. He closed the distance, his hands cupping her face, his thumbs brushing her cheeks. I'm in this, Jess, all the way. Are you? Her breath hitched, and the world narrowed to his eyes, his touch, the rain that started falling soft at first, then a torrent. You're gonna ruin me, she whispered, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she kissed him hard and desperate, the rain soaking her hoodie, his shirt, their skin. He kissed her back, his hands sliding to her waist, pulling her against him like he was afraid she'd vanish. They stumbled into the villa's master suite, a Fendi Casa dream of silk drapes and marble floors, the infinity pool's glow spilling through the windows. The rain pounded outside, mirroring the storm in Jess's chest. Nate kicked the door shut, his lips never leaving hers, and they fell onto the bed, a tangle of wet clothes and racing hearts. Her hoodie hit the floor, then his shirt, and the world blurred into heat and need. Jess, he murmured against her skin, his voice rough. You're everything. Her hands traced his back, her nails digging in as the rain roared, and every touch was a promise, every kiss a vow. Her skin glowed under the dim light, and his fingers mapped her like she was the only thing that mattered. It was raw, intense, but it wasn't just passion, it was trust, rebuilt in the space between heartbeats. When they finally stilled, tangled in the sheets, the rain had softened to a drizzle. Jess rested her head on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her cheek. I'm sorry, she whispered, for not telling you. I'm sorry too, he said, his fingers brushing her curls, for making you feel like you don't belong. You do, Jess. With me. She wanted to believe him, but the world outside was still waiting to tear them apart. Back in New York, the storm hit harder. Jess and Nate returned to Horizon's Manhattan headquarters, where the board called an emergency meeting in Nate's penthouse office, a $20 million Tribeca masterpiece with an onyx bar, a Basquiat on the wall, and a view of the Hudson that made Jess's head spin. Ethan stood at the head of the table, his tie strangling his neck, and laid out the ultimatum. Nathaniel, the investors are spooked, the stock's still dropping, and the optics of your relationship with Miss Thompson are a liability. Step down or cut ties with her. Now Jess's stomach dropped. She was in the room standing by the window, her thrift store blazer, a stark contrast to the board's Armani suits. Nate's jaw clenched, his eyes flicking to her. I'm not firing Jess, he said, his voice steel. She's the best thing this company's got, and I'm not stepping down. You want to fight me, Ethan? Bring it. Ethan's face reddened. You're throwing away our legacy for a janitor. This isn't just about you, it's about the Caldwell name. Then maybe the Caldwell name needs to mean something new. Nate shot back. He turned to Jess, his expression softening. We'll fix this together. But Jess wasn't so sure. As the meeting ended, she caught Claire's eye, her smile smug like she'd already won. Malik's article was still trending, the board was circling, and Jess felt like she was standing on a tightrope with no net. She'd given Nate her heart in Amalfi, but now she wondered if it was enough to survive the war coming for them both. Jess Thompson was pretty sure she'd used up all her luck. She'd survived spilling mop water on a billionaire presenting a rubber duck slideshow to global investors and falling for said billionaire in a rain-soaked Italian villa, but standing in the glass-walled conference room of Horizon Innovations, facing a laptop that held her last shot at saving her job, and maybe her heart. She felt like she was one wrong click away from disaster. The room was a sleek shrine to wealth, a $50,000 walnut table, Eames chairs that cost more than her mom's car, and a view of Central Park that screamed, "You'll never afford this." Her thrift store blazer was starting to fray, but the Tiffany bracelet on her wrist, a gift from Nate, glinted like a promise she was still afraid to believe. The board's ultimatum hung over her like a guillotine. Nate had to cut ties with her or step down as CEO. Malik's article had turned Horizon into a PR nightmare, with Twitter hashtags like Horizon Exploits trending alongside memes of Nate as a cartoon villain. Jess hadn't slept in days, haunted by Malik's confession and Claire's smug smile. She'd poured her heart into a new presentation, a real one, no ducks hoping to prove she was more than a liability. But doubt was a loud roommate whispering that she was still just a janitor playing pretend in a world that didn't want her. She was digging through Nate's laptop, looking for a file she'd sent him, when an email notification popped up. It was from years ago, buried in a folder labeled Personal. The subject line, Beaumont Scholarship. Her stomach twisted. Claire Beaumont, the lawyer with the Hermes bag, and a history with Nate had been a shadow over Jess's life since Monaco. Against her better judgment, Jess clicked. The email was from Nate's father, dated 5 years back. Nathaniel the Beaumonts. Expect you to fund Claire's law school scholarship. It's a family obligation, not a choice. Keep her close. She's the right match for our legacy. Nate's reply was curt. I'll fund it, but that's where it ends. My life's my own. Jess's breath caught. There were more emails, Claire thanking Nate. Nate keeping it professional. Nothing romantic. The scholarship wasn't love. It was duty. Nate had never lied. He'd chosen Jess over and over, despite his family, the board, and Claire's calculated charm. She closed the laptop, her heart racing. All this time she'd let Claire's shadow make her feel small, like she didn't belong. But Nate saw her, really saw her, and that was worth more than any penthouse or private jet. She had to fight for him, for them, and for the people at Horizon who'd trusted her with their stories. Malik's article was still a problem, but maybe she could fix that too. She grabbed her phone and texted him. Meet me at the jazz bar. We gotta talk. The jazz bar in Bed-Stuy was a time capsule of warmth and rhythm. Its walls lined with vinyl covers and its Steinway piano crooning under a saxophonist's touch. Jess sat at their usual booth, her hoodie swapped for a crisp white shirt, her curls loose for once. Malik walked in, his dreads tied back his Public Enemy t-shirt replaced by a blazer that made him look like he was auditioning for CNN. He slid into the booth, his eyes wary but soft. Yo, Jess, he said, setting down a coffee. You look different, like you're about to run for president or something. She laughed, but it was strained. More like I'm trying not to get fired. Malik. Your article's killing Horizon. The board's ready to torch Nate, and I'm caught in the crossfire. Why didn't you tell me it was gonna be that bad? Malik's jaw tightened. I told you it was big. Horizon's been screwing people like you for years, cutting hours, dodging benefits. I couldn't sit on that, but I didn't mean to hurt you, Jess. He looked away, his voice dropping. I thought if I showed you the truth, you'd come back to our world. To me. Jess's heart ached. Malik had been her ride or die since they were kids, sneaking into bodegas for free, Slurpees and dreaming of changing the world. But her world had shifted, and Nate was at the center of it. Malik, she said, reaching for his hand. You're my family. Always will be. But I love Nate, and I'm not walking away from him or from Horizon. I'm trying to fix it from the inside. Can you meet me halfway? He studied her, his eyes searching. Then he sighed, pulling out his phone. I was going to drop a follow-up piece, more dirt on Horizon's contracts. But for you, I'll hold off. On one condition, you make sure they change for real. Relief flooded her. Deal. I'm already working on it. And Malik, I'm sorry I didn't see how you felt. You're still my best friend. He managed a small smile. Yeah, well, you're lucky I'm a sucker for you. Go save your billionaire superstar. Back at Horizon. Jess threw herself into her plan. She'd spent weeks collecting employee feedback, hundreds of stories about burnout, disrespect, and small fixes that could make a big difference. She turned it into a proposal called Real Space, a program to give every worker a voice from janitors to coders. But to sell it to the board, she needed to lighten the mood after Malik's article, so she pitched an idea to Nate, a company-wide event, something to bring people together. He loved it, and they decided to turn her accidental KPI mix-up into a reality, a karaoke party international. The event took over Horizon's main lobby, the Lalique chandelier casting rainbows across a makeshift stage. Employees packed the space janitors in hoodies, techies in graphic tees, even a few execs loosening their ties. Jess had convinced the cafeteria to serve pizza and wings, and a DJ spun 90s hip-hop, turning the lobby into a Brooklyn block party. She wore jeans, a Brooklyn-born t-shirt, and her trusty sneakers, the Tiffany bracelet glinting as she worked the crowd, handing out mics and hyping people up. Yo, Horizon, she shouted into the mic, standing on a crate. Y'all ready to show these suits how we do it? The crowd cheered and Jess grinned. Feeling like herself for the first time in weeks, she kicked things off with a deliberately off-key rendition of Ain't No Mountain High Enough, flailing her arms like she was auditioning for a Muppet movie. The room roared with laughter, and Letitia jumped on stage, stealing the mic for a dramatic "My Heart Will Go On" that had everyone in stitches. Nate watched from the sidelines, his suit jacket off his sleeves rolled up. He looked like a kid at his first concert. His eyes locked on Jess. When she waved him up, he shook his head, but the crowd started chanting, "Nate, Nate." He gave in, climbing on stage with a sheepish grin. "All right, Thompson," he said, grabbing the mic. "You're gonna regret this." He launched into a surprisingly decent Sweet Caroline, and Jess joined him, their voices clashing in a glorious mess. The crowd sang along, and for a moment Horizon felt like a family, not a corporation. As the song ended, Nate pulled Jess close, his arm around her waist. "You're a genius," he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. "This is what we needed." She laughed, her heart soaring. "Told you I'm more than a mop. But you owe me pizza for life after this." "Done," he said, his eyes sparkling. The crowd cheered, and Jess caught Ethan's eye. He wasn't smiling, but he wasn't scowling either. Progress. The next day, Jess presented her Real Space proposal to the board in Horizon's top-floor conference room, its OLED 8K screen displaying her slides. No ducks this time. Just hard data, employee quotes, and a 3-step plan, anonymous surveys, training programs, and a task force to act on feedback. She stood tall, her voice steady despite the board's skeptical faces. "I'm not asking for a revolution," she said, locking eyes with Ethan. "I'm asking you to listen, to the people who clean your floors, code your apps, make your coffee. They're not numbers. They're the heart of this company. Ignore them, and you'll lose everything." Silence. Then, to her shock, Greg, the comb-over guy, clapped. Others joined, even Ethan, though his applause was grudging. Nate stood, his expression proud. I moved to approve the Real Space program with Jess as lead coordinator, all in favor. The vote was unanimous. Jess's knees nearly buckled, but she held it together, her heart pounding. She'd done it. She wasn't just a janitor anymore. She was changing Horizon from the inside. After the meeting, Nate found her in the break room pouring a coffee that didn't taste like motor oil for once. "You were unstoppable," he said, leaning against the counter. "I knew you had it in you." She grinned, stirring in sugar. "Yeah, well, I had a good teacher. But don't get cocky, Caldwell. I'm still mad about that yacht party." He laughed, stepping closer. "Fair, but I'm not letting you go, Jess. Not now, not ever. His hand brushed hers and the air crackled with possibility, but before they could say more, Jess's phone buzzed with an email from Claire. Leaving for London Horizons in good hands with you. See? Jess blinked, stunned. Claire gone. No more Hermes bag. No more smug smiles. She showed Nate, and he raised an eyebrow. Guess she finally got the memo. You're the one I want. Jess. Always have been. She looked at him, her doubts fading. You're gonna regret that when I start stealing your pizza? Never, he said, pulling her into a hug. She melted into him, the coffee forgotten, and for the first time she believed they could make it. That night, Jess went to her mom's apartment in Brooklyn, a cramped walk-up with peeling paint and a couch that sagged like it was tired of life. Her mom, Angela, was at the kitchen table sorting medical bills, her face lined with worry. Jess sat down, the Tiffany bracelet hidden under her sleeve. Mama, I got something to tell you, she said, her voice soft. I'm leading a big project at work, and I'm in love with the CEO. Angela's eyes widened. The CEO. Jess, you sure about this? Those rich folks, they don't always get us. You're a black girl from Bed-Stuy. Don't lose yourself trying to fit in. Jess took her mom's hand, her voice steady. I'm not losing myself, Mama. I'm still me, sneakers, bad karaoke, all of it. But I'm also someone who's making a difference. And Nate, he sees me, all of me. Angela studied her, then smiled, her eyes misty. Then hold on to him, baby. And don't let nobody dim your light. Jess hugged her tears, pricking her eyes. She was ready for Nate, for Horizon, for whatever came next. The board's ultimatum still loomed, but with Malik's article on hold and Claire out of the picture, she felt like she could breathe again. She just hoped it would last. Jess Thompson stood in a makeshift dressing room, a converted barn on the grounds of a Tuscan castle, staring at her reflection, like it belonged to someone else. The mirror showed a woman in a custom Dior gown, white silk with a blue ribbon sash, soft and flowing like a cloud with attitude. Her curls were woven into a loose braid, a single sunflower tucked behind her ear, and her feet defiantly were in white sneakers with satin laces. No heels. Never again. The dress was a gift from Nate worth $80,000. But Jess had made the designer promise it wouldn't make her look like a frou-frou cupcake. She'd won that battle, but her heart was still racing, because in 30 minutes she'd be walking down the aisle to marry Nathaniel Caldwell, the millionaire CEO who'd turned her world upside down with a mop bucket and a smile. Girl, you look like a queen, Letitia said, zipping up the back of Jess's dress. Her friend and former janitor colleague was in a bright purple dress, her hair in braids that swung as she moved. I knew you'd bag that billionaire the second you spilled water on him. I'm basically a prophet. Jess laughed, but it came out shaky. Tish, I'm freaking out. What if I trip, or say the wrong vows, or accidentally start rapping Beyoncé instead of saying I do? Letitia handed her a bottle of water, her eyes soft. You're Jess Thompson, the baddest chick in Brooklyn. You turned a duck slideshow into a corporate revolution. You got this, and if you trip, I'll catch you, or at least film it for TikTok. Jess grinned, her nerves easing. The barn smelled of hay and lavender, and through the open door she could see the wedding setup, a semicircle of wooden chairs in a vineyard, tables draped with linens and wildflowers. Lavender, jasmine, sunflowers chosen because Jess said, fancy flowers are overrated. I want ones that feel like a hug. A wooden box overflowed with rubber ducks, each tagged with a guest's name, and a sign read, Grab a duck. Today we swim together. It was a nod to her infamous presentation, now a company legend. The buffet was piled with gourmet pizza wings and milkshakes. Nate's idea, because nothing says love like stuffed crust. She touched the Tiffany bracelet on her wrist, a reminder of Dubai, and her mind flashed to the moment that had brought them here. 2 weeks ago on the rooftop of Nate's $20 million Tribeca penthouse with the Hudson River glittering below and the city skyline blazing, he'd proposed. No grand gesture, just him in jeans and a hoodie holding a graph ring with a 5-carat blue diamond that matched her eyes. "I don't want the world," he'd said, his voice rough with emotion. "I want you, Jess. Every day, every mess, every pizza. Will you build a life with me?" She'd said yes, then added, "But the wedding, better have pizza, and I'm not wearing heels." He'd laughed, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her like the city was theirs. Now standing in Tuscany, she wondered how a girl from Bed-Stuy had ended up here, but before she could spiral, Letitia shoved her toward the door. "Time to shine, superstar. Your man's waiting." Outside, the Tuscan sun bathed the vineyard in gold, the air sweet with grapes and promise. Nate stood at the altar, a simple wooden arch draped with ivy, wearing a light gray Armani suit. No tie, his chestnut hair slightly messy. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting, but when he saw Jess, his face lit up like she was the only person in the world. The guests, family, friends, Horizon employees turned as she walked down the aisle, her sneakers silent on the grass. Her mom Angela was in the front row wiping tears, and Malik in a sharp blazer gave her a nod. His smile, bittersweet, but proud. The officiant, a college friend of Jess's named Marcus, who moonlighted as a stand-up comedian, grinned as she reached the altar. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we're here to celebrate a love story that started with a mop bucket and ended with, well, this. Not a fairy tale, but something better, real messy and full of heart." Jess faced Nate, her hands in his, and the world faded. Marcus prompted her vows, and she took a breath, her Brooklyn accent ringing clear. "Nate, when I spilled water on you, I thought you'd fire me. Instead, you saw me. Really saw me. Not just the janitor, but the loud, stubborn, pizza-loving mess I am. You made me believe I could change the world, starting with yours. I promise to love you, challenge you, and steal your fries for the rest of our lives." The crowd chuckled and Nate's eyes shimmered. He squeezed her hands, his voice steady but thick. "Jess, you turned my life upside down. I was a guy chasing numbers, but you showed me what matters. Heart, courage, you. You're my chaos, my peace, my home. I promise to love you, laugh with you, and always keep the fridge stocked with pizza." Letitia whooped and the guests laughed. Marcus grinned. "Jessica Thompson, do you take Nathaniel Caldwell to be your partner in life? Love and bad karaoke?" "I do," Jess said, her voice breaking. "Nathaniel Caldwell. Do you take Jessica Thompson to be your soulmate, your partner in spilled coffee and spontaneous dance parties? With all my heart," Nate said, his dimple flashing. "Then by the power of love, ducks and overdue spreadsheets, I pronounce you husband and wife. Kiss her, Nate." Nate pulled Jess close, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that was soft, fierce, and tasted like forever. The crowd erupted and Letitia led a chant of "swim together" as guests grabbed their rubber ducks, tossing them in the air like confetti. Jess laughed against Nate's lips, her heart so full it hurt. The reception was a riot of joy. Tables groaned under piles of pizza, margarita pepperoni, even a truffle-infused one for the bougie guests. Milkshakes flowed, and a jazz band played Nina Simone Covers the Saxophone, weaving through the warm night. Jess and Nate cut a cake topped with a tiny rubber duck bride and groom, and Letitia stole the mic for a speech that had everyone in stitches. "I told Jess she'd marry the boss when she spilled that bucket," she said. "Now look at her running Horizon and stealing my pizza." To Jess and Nate. The realest power couple I know. Jess dragged Nate to the dance floor, her sneakers scuffing the grass as they swayed to. "Feeling good? You're stuck with me now, Caldwell," she said, her arms around his neck. "No refunds. Good. he said, spinning her. "You're the best investment I ever made." He dipped her, and she squealed, the crowd cheering. Later, she grabbed the mic for a deliberately awful "Ain't No Mountain High Enough," Nate recording it with a grin, his caption later reading, "Married the love of my life." She sings like nobody's listening, and I'm here for it. As the night wound down, Jess and Nate slipped away to a wooden bench under a string of fairy lights, the vineyard stretching into the darkness. She kicked off her sneakers, her bare feet in the grass, and rested her head on his shoulder. "We did it," she said, her voice soft. "From mop water to this?" "How?" "Because you're you," he said, kissing her forehead. "And I'm the luckiest guy alive." She smiled, her heart steady. "Promise me we'll keep it real, Nate. Pizza sneakers, all of it, no matter how fancy life gets." "Promise," he said, his hand finding hers. "With all the mistakes, all the love." Back in New York, Horizon was a different beast. Jess's real space program had taken off with weekly meetings where employees, janitors, coders, even the Snickers-hoarding security guy shared ideas. The board had approved her as permanent coordinator with a salary that made her mom cry happy tears. They'd switched the internal chat to a user-friendly app, redesigned the onboarding process, and launched an active listening initiative that had employees buzzing. The cafeteria got a cappuccino machine, and the break room apples were no longer shriveled. Horizon's stock was climbing, and the hashtag Horizon exploits hashtag had faded, replaced by stories of change. Nate had faced the board's ultimatum head-on. In a meeting at his penthouse with its onyx bar and Basquiat painting, he'd torn up the resignation letter. "I'm stepping back as CEO for 6 months," he'd said, his voice firm. "I'll stay on as chairman. But Jess is leading real space, and she's staying. If you don't like it, find a new family to run this place." Ethan had balked, but the board swayed by Jess's results. Agreed. Nate's temporary step back was a small price for a bigger win. Jess moved into Nate's penthouse, but they bought a cozy Brooklyn brownstone too, a place where she could blast Alicia Keys and eat pizza on the stoop. Her mom visited, bringing her famous peach cobbler, and declared Nate good people, even if he's too fancy. Malik started a new investigative series, this time on healthcare reform, and he and Jess grabbed coffee weekly. Their friendship stronger for the scars Claire stayed in London. Her emails to Nate dwindling to nothing. Jess's name started popping up in headlines. Brooklyn janitor turned corporate trailblazer. She spoke at a diversity conference, sneakers and all, and told the crowd, "You don't need a degree to change the world. You need heart hustle and maybe a mop." The audience gave her a standing ovation. One Friday night, Jess and Nate sat on their brownstone's rooftop, a pizza box between them, the skyline glittering like a promise kept. She wore a hoodie, her curls free, and he was in a t-shirt, his Patek Philippe swapped for a cheap watch she'd bought him as a joke. Who'd have thought, she said, licking sauce off her fingers, a spill in a lobby would lead to this? Nate pulled her close, his lips brushing her temple. "I did. The second you looked at me with those eyes, I knew you were trouble. The best kind." She laughed, leaning into him. "Keep talking like that and I'll make you sing karaoke again." "Deal," he said, his voice warm. "As long as it's with you." They sat there, the city humming below, and Jess felt it, a truth she'd scribbled in an old planner years ago. The day you're noticed for being exactly who you are is the most important day of your life. She'd found that day and every day since. With Nate, with Horizon, with herself. Hey, what did you think of Jess and Nate's wild ride from mop buckets to Tuscan vows? Drop a comment and tell us your favorite moment. Was it the ducks, the pizza, or that epic kiss? If you loved this story, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for more heart-pounding, laugh-out-loud tales. Thanks for sticking with us. You're the real MVPs.